Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
Moving out of the city and into the suburbs was supposed to be a fresh start. I had spent years in cramped apartments dealing with noisy neighbors, constant construction, and the general hustle and bustle of city life. So when I found this quiet little place in the suburbs, I thought, this is it, finally a peaceful place to live. The lease was straightforward. No pets without my landlord's approval. That seemed fair enough. I wasn't one to break rules, but I loved my cats, so I made sure to get permission from my landlord. After a little back and forth, he gave me the green light. What no one mentioned, what no one bothered to mention, was that this new place came with an HOA attached. I had never dealt with an HOA before, so when I got the first complaint, I was blindsided. I was a tenant, not even the owner, and yet here I was getting complaints about my cats. My two little furballs were being blamed for making too much noise. That didn't even make sense. The neighborhood was crawling with stray cats, but somehow the HOA decided that the noise was coming from mine. They slapped me with a $50 fee for the cats and sent a message to my landlord, claiming that the noise was unbearable. Of course, I had to explain everything to my landlord. He wasn't exactly thrilled, but he wasn't upset either. I mean, he had given me permission, so what was the big deal? I even had to argue with the HOA that the noise was probably from the dozens of stray cats that roamed the neighborhood at night, howling like they were auditioning for some feline opera. But they didn't care. They had found their target, and that target was me. And that was only the beginning. Soon after moving in, I found out that the HOA had all these extra fees I had no idea about. For starters, they made me pay for a parking pass. Fine, whatever, I paid it. But then, while I was waiting for them to issue the pass, they had the nerve to threaten to tow my car. My car was parked in front of my own rental, and they were acting like it was some sort of massive crime. I was furious. Imagine getting penalized for something that was entirely their fault. But this is how it was with them. Every little thing became a massive issue. Then came the mattress incident. I had an old mattress that I was replacing, and the trash company told me they'd be picking it up in a few days. So I did what anyone would do. I left it neatly outside, tucked against the side of the house, waiting for collection. But of course, the HOA swooped in again. They complained that it was an eyesore and demanded I move it immediately, even though it was scheduled to be picked up. It wasn't even in anyone's way, but that didn't matter to them. But here's where things got really messy. They refused to speak to me directly for the longest time. Every complaint, every issue they had, they insisted on going through my landlord. Now, my landlord wasn't even from the US, and his English was pretty limited. He wasn't ignoring them because he didn't care. He just didn't understand half of what they were trying to say. And honestly, I couldn't blame him. I wouldn't want to deal with them either if I had the option. They were rude, condescending, and completely inflexible. Every interaction felt like a power struggle, as if they enjoyed making life difficult for everyone around them. The craziest part was that most of my neighbors hadn't even heard of this HOA until recently. Some of them had been living there for over 5 years, and suddenly, out of nowhere, this organization pops up and starts issuing fines left and right. People who had pets for years were now getting hit with pet fees, parking fees, and complaints for things that were never an issue before. It was like they were making up rules on the fly and enforcing them as they saw fit. And the worst part, no one knew who was actually running the HOA. It was as if this shadowy organization just materialized out of thin air, determined to make everyone's life miserable. When they realized that my landlord wasn't going to deal with them, either because he didn't understand or simply didn't want to, they finally started communicating with me. But even then, it was like pulling teeth to get a straight answer from them. They'd ignore my emails, dodge my calls, and then send me another complaint as if we hadn't spoken at all. It felt personal at that point, like they were singling me out just because they could. Every time I thought things had calmed down, they'd find some new ridiculous issue to harass me about. One time, I walked out to check the mail, and I saw one of the HOA board members skulking around my property. He didn't even try to hide it, just stood there with his clipboard, jotting down notes like he was Sherlock Holmes solving the mystery of the century. I asked him what he was doing, and he gave me the most passive-aggressive response I've ever heard. Something about ensuring the community standards were being upheld. Yeah, sure. More like finding a reason to fine me again. My breaking point came when they sent yet another notice about my car. They claimed I was parking too close to the curb and that it was a safety hazard. I couldn't believe it. There was no one else on the street, no traffic, no issues whatsoever, but somehow this was a major concern for them. I called them out on it, and of course they brushed me off, acting like I was overreacting. It was like they thrived on making life as inconvenient as possible. Eventually, I just gave up trying to reason with them. They weren't going to change, and I was stuck dealing with their nonsense until my lease was up. My landlord, bless his heart, continued to ignore them, leaving me to deal with the fallout. I tried to laugh it off, but every new complaint chipped away at my patience. Moving out of the city was supposed to make my life easier, but this HOA turned it into a constant headache. By the time I moved out, I swore I would never live in another HOA-controlled neighborhood again. It wasn't worth the hassle, the fees, or the endless complaints. My landlord had been great, and the house itself was nice enough, but that HOA, never again. They made what should have been a peaceful suburban escape into a nightmare, and I wasn't the only one who felt that way. Your problem is with the landlord. The owner-landlord is bound by the HOA rules. You are bound by the lease. All fees and rules should have been included with your lease, or the lease should have mentioned the rules and included a copy. The one problem you may have with the HOA is that they may tow your car if you don't pay the parking fee, so I would pay that. If your agreement lease included parking, the landlord should reimburse you for the parking fee. Your lease should have contained verbiage about abiding by the HOA rules and regulations, and the owner should have provided you with the HOA documentation, including the rules and the pet info, parking info, and fees. If you had those, you would have known you can't leave a mattress out to be picked up and the rules about pets, etc. It really sounds, it's not so much an HOA issue as much as it is a lazy owner-landlord issue, except for the cat noise. That just sounds like a batty neighbor who likely complains about everything. You're new, and you just need to defend yourself a bit, and then let that one go.
If you like our stories, then please like and subscribe and comment, and remember to hit that bell icon so you never miss out. We have new stories almost every day.
Living in our neighborhood has turned into an absolute nightmare. We don't belong to the HOA, and that's exactly where this whole mess started. For years, we've been viciously bullied by nearly every member of the HOA. I've only ever met two of their so-called leaders in person, and that was years ago. But ever since we declined their persistent invitations to join, the situation has spiraled out of control. One of the leaders, a woman I won't even dignify by naming, has made it her personal mission to retaliate against us for standing our ground. It started small. After we turned down the invitation, I didn't think much of it, but then I noticed the subtle things. Dirty looks when I'd walk my dog or head out to check the mail. It was easy to brush off in the beginning. Who cares if a few neighbors are cold, right? We didn't owe them anything. But that was just the beginning of the onslaught that would unfold. Soon after, strange things started happening. Trash was dumped in our yard. Our car tires were slashed once, and someone even threw eggs at our front door. These weren't isolated incidents either, and the worst part, I knew who was behind it all. The leader who had first asked us to join the HOA had found a way to rally the entire neighborhood against us. It's like she made it her personal mission to make our lives miserable. I documented everything, filed reports with the police hoping the madness would stop, but instead it only escalated. And it's not just the adults who are participating in this sick campaign. They're adult children who don't even live here anymore. Get in on the act. When we're outside, these people, neighbors, people we don't even know, spit at us. Yes, actual grown adults spit at us. When we go for a walk, they'll drive by, flipping us off from their cars. Sometimes they'll pass our house on foot and make a show of giving the finger to our home as if it's some sort of community event. I can't tell you how many times I've asked myself, who does this? It's absurd. I don't even know half of these people, yet they seem so personally invested in our lives. It's like they've created this collective vendetta against us simply because we dared to say no thanks to the HOA, and the fact that we don't belong to the HOA only makes it worse for them. It's like they can't stand that we live within their boundaries, but they have no control over us. It drives them nuts. Sure, they can't fine us or dictate what color we paint our house, but that hasn't stopped them from trying to drive us out by making our day-to-day life as unpleasant as possible. We've had everything thrown at us both literally and figuratively. But here's the thing, they can keep trying all they want, but we're not going anywhere. Our home is in a fantastic location, and we'd never be able to afford it if we were to buy it in today's market. And we love this house. My family is happy here. We laugh, we sing, we play music. We've built a life here, and for all their nastiness they can't take that away from us. But I won't lie, it's hard. The constant harassment has started to chip away at our enjoyment of this place. Every time I step outside, I brace myself. It's like I'm waiting for the next insult, the next sneer, the next ridiculous attempt to tear us down. And it's not just words anymore. They've started telling complete strangers about us, people who don't even live in the neighborhood. We caught 2 of the leaders on our security cameras pointing at our house and telling random people about us, trying to recruit even more people to their little bullying crusade. The cameras, by the way, are a whole other point of contention for them. We installed security cameras around our property for obvious reasons, but now they use that against us too. They say we're paranoid, crazy even, for having so many cameras. Apparently protecting ourselves from their harassment is somehow an issue for them. It's laughable, really. And it doesn't stop. Just this past May, I was outside raking leaves. Yes, leaves, something that seems pretty mundane. And one of them couldn't resist making a snide comment. As they walked by, I heard them loudly say, "Imagine if we had leaf problems like that." Gross. Really? Leaves? I let the leaves stay over winter because it's good for the soil and wildlife, but of course, to them, it's just another excuse to judge and criticize. It's exhausting. You'd think grown adults would have better things to do with their lives than bully their neighbors, but here we are. And I get it, bullies thrive on this kind of thing. It's the same mentality as back in grade school, except now it's happening in my own front yard, in a place that's supposed to be a sanctuary for me and my family. Every day, I hope it'll stop, that they'll finally get bored and move on. But it just keeps escalating. We've even looked into hiring a lawyer, but the costs are outrageous. The few attorneys we've talked to either don't want to touch the case or quote us prices starting at $15,000. I have kids in college and other expenses, so dropping that kind of money on a legal battle with a bunch of bullies is just not realistic right now. The worst part is, they try to spin this entire situation as if they're the victims. Can you believe that? They act like we're the ones causing problems because we've reported them to the police. Suddenly, we're the crazy neighbors who have too many cameras, and who are making their lives difficult by, not tolerating their harassment. It's absurd. I don't know what their endgame is. Are they hoping we'll just pack up and leave? Maybe they think they'll win some kind of prize if they make us miserable enough to move. But here's the truth. They've already lost, because no matter how hard they try, they can't break us. Yes, their constant harassment is wearing on us, but we're stronger than they'll ever be. We're not going to let a bunch of petty, small-minded people chase us out of our home. Still, I can't help but wish things were different. I wish I could step out into my yard without feeling like I'm walking into enemy territory. I wish my kids didn't have to see adults acting like high school bullies. But for now, all we can do is keep documenting everything, keep reporting them to the police, and keep standing our ground. I'm not naive enough to think this will stop anytime soon. They've invested too much into their little war against us to just give up. But here's the thing. They can keep coming at us, and we'll keep standing strong. At the end of the day, we're not the ones wasting our time and energy on a pointless vendetta. They are, and that's something I'm sure they'll never understand. So the whole point of an HOA is to theoretically increase property values, right? Nice big front yard sign, "Don't buy here. The HOA is terrible. Days since last incident with an HOA member, a space for days, keep it factual and true so it isn't libel. When they come demanding its removal, offer to take it down if the current HOA board resigns or is voted out." It's year 7. I was blissfully ignorant of their bitchiness for the first few years here because there's enough acreage to tell myself, oh, that was such a coincidence, gee golly silly me, didn't realize people were so paranoid and angry and ready to just take it out on a stranger. My neighborhood is spread out and very forested. They think they're scaring me with their bullshit, but by now I find it very pathetic that they stalk, wait, and try to bait me into reacting to their BS. Because it's so spread out, it's not everyone that lives here that's in on it, but the ones that are very committed to being assholes, gang stalking, fear-mongering. Then, like yours, they flip and play victim. At this rate, someone is going to do something very incriminating. It's going to be a very interesting summer. Last summer was a trip. I'm very interested to see what kind of shit they're going to pull this summer. That being said, watch your kids and your pets. If it makes you anxious, don't upload a thing online. Your mental health and family's well-being are priority. This may take too much energy from you. I'm not sure what will come of it. A running tally of incidents with HOA members is indeed a more practical and legally sound approach. By documenting each occurrence, you create a clear, factual record that's less prone to misinterpretation or disputes. This method allows for precise tracking of harassment frequency and patterns, which could be crucial if legal action becomes necessary. It also prevents the risk of overcounting or undercounting that might occur with a days since format. Additionally, a tally system makes it easier to categorize incidents by type or severity, providing a more comprehensive picture of the ongoing situation. This approach not only helps in maintaining accuracy, but also in building a stronger case should you need to present evidence to authorities or legal representatives. Remember to include dates, times, and brief descriptions of each incident to ensure a thorough and credible record.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.